everybody. We're back again for another episode of Out of Band. I'm Anne Leslie.
My name is Jennifer Winnekers.
And my name is Faith Apia.
And today we have another super guest. We're joined by Patrick Wheeler. Now, Patrick has many, many strings to his bow, and I'm going to pass it over to him to introduce himself just in a second. But we've asked Patrick to join us today as another aspect of people doing impactful, cool stuff for the community, in the community, to help build skills, to help people build careers. We've, talked amply in these episodes about the skills shortage. Well, we're going to be talking about it, but in a very positive framing, which is there are ways of doing stuff, and there are ways of people coming into our industry to have successful careers, have fulfilling careers. So Patrick, welcome. Really happy to have you with us today. Delighted to have you with us. Can you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been in cybersecurity for quite a few years. I originally came out of San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and I'm now consider myself a European native in that I've been successful in gaining my citizenship. So I'm permanently based here. And indeed, in addition to my day job, which is a cybersecurity practitioner, I do a lot of things in the financial sector particularly. The thing I spend the vast majority of my time and attention these days is on indeed this challenge of bringing new people into cybersecurity as a profession. And the primary vehicle that we use for this is the CyberWayFinder program. And this is based out of Brussels, and it is an effort that it's almost 6 years old now. And it came out of some of the frustrations that we faced in trying to understand what were the challenges and the things that were holding people back from getting into cybersecurity. We've gotten, I think, over 100 people now who've successfully made the switch from other careers into cybersecurity. Some amazing successes that I love to shout about. Some other people who have struggled mightily and are a lot more shy about their struggles. And an amazing group of different people who've succeeded at it. So thank you for letting me come and talk today.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Faith and Jennifer, please jump in, right? Because just a little bit of context for the audience. Patrick was one of the very first people that I met and has been instrumental to me as a friend, a mentor, a guide, sounding board. I didn't go through CyberWayFinder to make my pivot. I didn't do that official route, but I kind of feel like it was my spiritual guide in a lot of ways, because I met Patrick at a financial services conference, got chatting. He explained about the program, said, have you ever thought about, making a move into cybersecurity? And I'm ashamed to say I laughed. I actually laughed. And I remember I wanted to be polite, but I was like, I don't know, that's preposterous. I couldn't possibly, back
you
then.
Being polite. I'd hate to see you rude, Anne. You were quite blunt.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, I just knowing where I am now and knowing how I reacted when we first had that conversation. Absolutely. But I think it's worth calling out because I didn't see myself in this industry, and I am now, and I'm loving it. I'm doing well at it. But when we first had that conversation, it was like, no, that's not for people like me. And I really believed it. I had the guys in the hoodies. That was my archetype. Mm-hmm. So just to kind of frame it in that way is that's where I started. So that's how it started. This is how it's going. And the impact. So, we change the world one action, one life, one person at a time kind of thing. But I just wanted to kind of call that out, which is it was a chance encounter that with patience and guidance and willing and generous sharing of contacts and knowledge that I got to where I am, and I'm still going. But it was that chance encounter that kicked that whole thing off.
And this is actually, there were three things happening, I argue, at that moment or in that time frame. And this is one of the things that we talk about in our program, that we need to engineer 3 simultaneous lightning strikes. Number one, you have to be ready and agitating to make a move. And we never know when we're actually ready to make a move, when we're restless, there's something not right in our current plateau and we're seeking something else. The second point in cybersecurity to transition in, you often need to know someone in cybersecurity who makes that invitation, who actually says, hey, come on inside. It's actually pretty nice in here and you get to do some really cool stuff and help people. And the third lightning strike that often has to happen is that there has to be a job opportunity for you at that moment, or something that you can actually realistically see yourself stepping into. And this is one of the things when we were doing the early research for CyberWayFinder, and we heard a lot of things about the pipeline argument, 14-year-old girls in STEM. And I was looking at that and I did the math and I look at it and say, well, I can't hire anyone who's under 40 years old at the moment, not because of ageism, but because I need that many years of experience before I can bring them into my architecture practice. I can't wait for a 14-year-old to get to be 40 years old. The math doesn't balance. But then I also looked at all of my colleagues who were amazing people who had political science, who had law degrees, who one of my favorite CISOs has a PhD in opera. One of my favorite threat hunters out in the UK has a degree in psychology. And so I looked at all of my colleagues, these amazing people, and I said, but none of them have these STEM degrees we're talking about. None of them came through that pipeline. And so I tried to figure out what was in that pipeline. And then we tried to build a program that would engineer those types of lightning strikes. And I went around striking out a lot with people like Anne. And this was also one of the challenges, because you can only be in so many places with so many people and have so many of these conversations. And we said, okay, how can we build this into a machine such that at least one piece of the equation is there, which is the CyberWayFinder program. So we're trying to be standing lightning. Then we're also trying to trigger people to say, okay, if not now, next year, there's, your life is complex right now, your career is in jumbles right now, you're not ready for us, but we'll be there for you next year. But then also try to keep pulling people through that barrier, through all of those barriers.
Yeah, because if we clarify the playing field a little bit at the moment, because we're in the start of our conversation, the thing that we hear most is that cybersecurity is an extremely difficult industry to get into. It often is being mentioned as gatekeeping, either by, for example, the employers who demand, for example, for an entry-level job, 5 years of experience or a very specialistic type of education, and often seek to fill out a specific checkbox list versus actually looking at people that they want to hire. And on the other hand, we actually have a lot of skilled people who live and breathe, for example, cybersecurity, but somehow don't get to meet those demands. And on the other hand, we have people like Anne, for example, who never in a million years thought that cybersecurity could be something that she would be interested in, and somehow is still thriving because she actually managed to get through.
Yes.
So yeah. No, sorry, Faye, please.
Yeah, so how exactly does CyberWayFinder help spark the three, ignite the three sparks that you were talking about?
Sure. And this is one of the things that we're still, even 6 years on, we're still in a learning process, and every person is different. But the machinery that we've tried to put together is relatively consistent. One of the things that we know about cybersecurity, as with any domain of practice, whether it's law, whether it's medical, is that there is a language. And one of the things I love about working with my European colleagues is that we're already multilingual, and everyone already has the ability to speak the language of cybersecurity. And so for a big part of what CyberWayFinder does is we teach the language of cybersecurity. Now, I should say that it's not just that simple. We teach the knowledge and the baselines of cybersecurity. So we started out with a 3-year program. And in this 3-year program, we did a boot camp into the basics of cybersecurity. And then we got people jobs. We got people jobs before they were ready. And we were very proud of Swift, the financial organization, who was one of our sponsoring startups. And they gave us 4 of their internal employees who worked in different departments inside of Swift. And we also worked with some people who ended up landing at Euroclear, at the BNP Group, at the Belgian CyberSOC, and at the EU institutions as well. And so we recruited a very broad spectrum of people, and we spent the first 6 months teaching them the basics of cybersecurity and then getting them into a job. And this indeed deals with that challenge of you can't get a job until you have work experience, you can't get work experience until you have a job.
Chicken and egg story.
Exactly. And I would love to say that we had a few enlightened hiring managers, but no, we had some amazing hiring managers coming out of the woodwork. And this is the thing that I love about this program, is that there are people who want to solve this problem, and we've been looking at it for a long time, and nobody has had a solution that people felt they could buy into.
Yeah.
But we were able to tell a hiring manager, listen, we'll support them with the basic knowledge. All you have to do is throw them into the deep end and watch them swim. And every single one of them that had this opportunity did exactly this. And so we spent the first year teaching them this. The other thing that we love to complain about in cybersecurity, but it's also very real, is that we're credentialists.
Yeah.
Do you have a certification? And then, of course, as soon as you have one, we love to attack it because certification isn't knowledge, isn't competency.
Yeah.
But at least when you pass a certification, you have proven a base level of competency, that you understood the language, the methodologies, that you could regurgitate it onto a standardized test.
Yeah.
And so our program didn't actually have any exams, but we did ask at the end of the first year that you take and pass the SSCP. And we did all of the basic training, the 8 domains of knowledge, so that you could pass the SSCP from ISC squared. It's proctored, it's standardized, it's recognized in the industry. And the most important thing is you can actually be fully certified after only 1 year of experience. Almost all of the other certifications require 5 years.
5 years,
4 years, 4 to 5.
And for a starter, that's a non-starter.
And just for our viewers, if you don't know SSCP, that is basically one of the starter certifications, which provides a very good overview of IT infra general specs, basically. It's a very good cert to start with.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that we've said about our program. We think our program is magic, and it is in many ways. But as Anne was able to show, she could do it without our program.
Yeah.
Now, the extra benefits from our program was a cohort that you were learning with. I'm one of these old people that insists we need to learn in person in a classroom. So we had this lovely startup place above the train station in Brussels. And every Tuesdays and Thursday nights and then Saturday mornings for a year, our people met there. Now with the COVID stuff, we've gone a little bit more virtual, which was what my co-founder Rosanna always pushed. She always wanted to do the flipped learning. She's well connected into some of the educational stuff coming out of Palo Alto and this type of thing. So this was always our main modus. But the thing that really shocked us was not just the hiring managers, but also the teachers. We went out to my peers and to the cybersecurity practitioners in the domains that we were asking to teach. And we got people who had no idea how to teach. And I love the response I got back from one of my favorite threat hunters. He's actually a young man who works in my group. And he was just top of the charts as far as the feedback from his classroom. And I went up to him, I said, Guillaume, what did you do that made you such a good teacher? Because you told me you didn't know how to do this when I asked you. And he said, Patrick, I was so afraid. I went to YouTube, and for 2 weeks, I watched professors talk about how to teach.
But that's awesome. That is seriously awesome.
It was awesome. It was seriously awesome because he changed his own vision of himself. Yeah. And as much as I was targeting the people who are coming through the program, and I wanted as stepping stones to be our trainers and my colleagues, no, they became so invested in these people's success. And this also became a big part of their success. It's because they had mentors and they had people around them and they had a community around them of success. Not a single one of them didn't have imposter syndrome. The stories they told me about when they first got their job and they went into the first meeting and people were throwing stuff around, all of the knowledge and the contextual things about the company. And they walked out of the meeting completely shell-shocked, went into the bathroom and hyperventilated for 15 minutes. And then came out. And by year 3, we had new cohorts coming in, and I would tell them, oh yes, the bathroom story again. And I would tell people this, it's like, this is one of your success criteria, is that when this happens, just keep the straight face, just let it go, wait until you're able to close that door, take your 15 minutes and come back. That was year 1. We also followed year 2 and 3. Yeah. And the idea here is that at the end of year 2, you take your cloud certification. And at the end of year 3, you take your SSCP. Now, this one is not so easy. And this one is kind of, generally a lot of people stop at this one. This is kind of your top level ISC squared proctored exam. And a lot of people don't have this actually that are working in the domain. You also can't get it until you've had 5 years experience. Hopefully at the end of year 3, you've had 3, but they also will give you credit for other types of work that you've done. And this is one of the key things about our
education.
program. We're targeting mature working professionals who might have had 5 or 10 or even 20 years. One lady, I don't like to mention her age because one does not do that, but she definitely was my age. And she came through the program and she was the most disciplined of all of them. I still wish I had a picture of her study book, because she had everything tabbed, the chapters tabbed on the side, and then across the top pieces as well. And she passed her exam midway through the 3rd year. And she actually now works in my crypto team. She's my key and certificate manager. And I'm not ever letting her go because I sleep well at night knowing that she holds the keys to my bank. And this is at its heart what our program has been about. Now we've had to change it and we've had to learn a lot from our first 3-year program. We found that this 3-year accelerated approach from entry person to mid-career professional was indeed too much to ask for a lot of people. Some people would take the year and they would get in, and it was, hold on, just stop learning outside of work, learn like heck inside of work. Let me stabilize here a little bit before we go on with this. So this has been one of our bigger successes right now, is where we take people and we just get them started. We get that first foot in the door. We also, I should mention, we do a lot with interview techniques and how to present yourself when you are honestly insecure and you don't honestly have the competencies and you do not want to lie, because everyone in the room knows who you are. We read your CV, we know who you are. And this is what's amazing. When you show this drive and when you show this interest, when you show that you've done the hard work and you're passionate about it, the hiring managers will give us a chance. We will take a chance on you. And this is what's amazing when you distill our successes down to what they are. They are in effect what Anne did as well, which is show that drive, show how hard she's going to work, and also not leave anything behind. Bring all of your knowledge that you gained in your previous domains into the cybersecurity domain and enrich the cybersecurity domain with who you are.
Yeah, because that is something that actually often gets overlooked. Like, cybersecurity is a specialism, yes, but it still has a lot in common with other specialties, other domains, and a lot of skills are actually quite transferable from one domain or the other.
Not only that, but the skills that are the hardest to learn. How much time? Okay, a few minutes. CyberWayFinder started out of an experience I had as a CISO of a bank in Luxembourg. And I was given 2 students for their stage. And this was a 9-month stage. They were still in school. They were gonna have to go back and finish their university studies. And I kind of looked at them and said, I literally, while they were working for me, we were attacked by people who we attribute now to be North Korea. So these were the people who knocked over Bangladesh and the New York Fed, shall we say, if you want to do that attribution. And these 2 young ladies, I offered them either a stage or an apprenticeship. And the idea of the stage was that they would, come in, do some boring work for me and go home and have fun at night. And the apprenticeship is I would actually throw them into the deep end, but I would help them through it. Both of them, bless their hearts, chose to jump into the deep end with the apprenticeship. And both of them became integral to our successes in not suffering a major breach when we were attacked by an advanced and very persistent and competent attacker. And the thing that actually astonished me is that the biggest challenge I had with them was teaching them politics in the office, how to be an office worker in a structured, regimented, licensed cybersecurity environment. And so that was actually where the challenge is from. The subject matter itself, inside of 3 months, these ladies were, self-directed. This was also where I mentioned curse of knowledge versus beginner's brain. I had forgotten what I had learned and how I had learned it. So I was unfair in asking them to do things they legitimately couldn't do. I got that feedback later where the squads would turn and say to them, what did you do to make Patrick mad at you? You can't do that. Here, let me help you. And they did. All of the squads came together to be part of their success. And so they actually became not just integral to us, but they became something that we were all very proud of, their success. And it was quite noticed throughout the enterprise. But again, I come back to the point where it's these additional life skills that are some of the toughest things for us to figure out.
So if someone would be interested in potentially switching domains, potentially going from either, for example, finance or from psychology, from legal, from HR, whatever, actually take the jump and go into cybersecurity, what would you recommend them?
So first of there's many different ways to have this happen. And one of the best ways is actually within the company you're currently working within. This allows you to make one single transition at a time from one career into another career where you already have the contextual knowledge. One of the ladies from Swift that joined our program was a former SAP expert. So of course, when the red team needed to red team against the SAP implementation, guess who was running that program? And guess who had so much fun? So indeed, if you can find a way where you can transition where you already are, where you already have the stability. The other thing is that indeed you need to take the time to do some learning. You need to do some heavy learning on the language. Don't be afraid of the language. Don't be afraid of TCP/IP. It's actually not that bad. Don't be afraid of cryptography. We have some amazing teachers who can teach cryptography. And so we think it actually is important to have that kind of structured learning. So you can do this kind of thing, but it also helps to talk to people to make sure that it really is reasonable and for you. One of the things that we really tell people about is examine your motivations. A lot of us are hugely intrinsically motivated to succeed in this space because we know the good we're bringing to our societies. And to examine these, and literally I have people come to me who have this desire to, through a midlife crisis or whatever types of things, they really, really want to make a difference. But then when you really dig into it, they want to work on a human scale, or they want to work on ecological issues. To which we say, lovely, we love you, but this is maybe not the right direction for you at this moment. So those are some of the first things, is to really truly check your motivation, but then also to open yourself up to how exciting cybersecurity can be and how diverse it can be. One of my favorite people who does some amazing stuff, and kind of like Anne, she kind of was on the side of our organization, but used us as a sounding board and a leverage board, now works for a think tank in the EU on cyber warfare and cyber diplomacy, writing thought papers and speaking at a lot of conferences trying to deal with some of this stuff. So there's a lot of different ways you can find your way into cybersecurity. And it helps a lot if you know what motivates you around cybersecurity and what you bring to it. If you're someone who has that kind of geopolitical sense, that's great. If you're someone who has a legal or a law background, indeed, then that might be a place where you can look at some of the contracts, you can look at liabilities, you can look at some of the post-incident problems we have to deal with. There's a lot of places where you can segue into it. So do look at what you've got already and say, how can we step into this? So that's my biggest advice. And the other one is to not let the little voice of doubt in the back of your mind stop you. The thing I keep trying to tell everyone is that even after decades doing this, I still have that voice of doubt that says I'm not good enough, I'm not competent enough. I work with 15 people that are all smarter than me in a different domain, and we scare each other on a daily basis. And that's what's exciting about it.
I mean, I think that's for most of the people actually intimidating because of the fact that it's such a diverse domain, cybersecurity. There are so many smart people walking around you that you interact with on a daily basis that it can be sometimes a bit intimidating, but also very exciting.
Many years ago, my wife took me to the gym for the first time, and we were living in Sacramento, California. And there was this man off in the corner, and I learned later his name was called Big Bob. And the reason he was called Big Bob is he was an extra in Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian movie.
Oh, wow.
And Big Bob could lift weights like nobody else on the planet that I had ever met in person. You know, it was like, this is like, wow, this is amazing. And in the cyber world, we have some of these, you know, cyber wow. There's a guy I used to work with, and he's still part of a company that I associate with, who does reverse engineering. This is one of the few people I know who can actually look at source material, and actually you feel like he can actually read ones and zeros natively. And he started, I think, when he was 13, and he's now in his mid-50s, and he's still writing tools and releasing tools on a regular basis. And you can look at these people like this and think, oh, good, Big Bob, I'll never be Big Bob. And the biggest point here is that we don't need to be Big Bob. That's not our goal. We need to be the best of what we are and who we are. And indeed, even if you are in an elite squad, shall we say, of threat hunters or response people, even if you're not the best of the best on the first day, we all started somewhere.
Yeah.
And we all need to be able to support each other through this. And this is one of the things that I take satisfaction of, shall we say, and it deals with my imposter syndrome. It's like, no, I'm doing my best every single day. Someday that wasn't my best day, but tomorrow I'll be doing better. And so this is
contributing. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, I do presume that the CyberWayFinder is not free, right?
Indeed. And this is actually something we're still working on. Initially, it was free, and it was worked on a placement model with the goal that the people who hired the people would be able to pay for them, or that the companies that sponsored their employees to come through would pay for that. And indeed, what we found is that the hiring people were very happy to get people, but then didn't want to pay retroactively for the training that they had received to get them started. So at this point, we have had to go to a for-fee model, and that's listed on our website at the moment. The other thing that has been interesting for us is we always wanted to not take money out of the pockets of people who weren't certain they were going to succeed at it. And when we look at education, a lot of it is funded by government agencies. And so we've been beneficial in getting some grants from the Brussels region. We're also recognized in Luxembourg as a training organization, so we can get some assistance from some of those. And that has always been our biggest goal, is to try to make sure that people don't have to pay out of pocket for it.
Yeah.
And that's one of our biggest challenges still.
Okay, so so people can join and request funding through those channels, right?
Yes, the easiest way, of course, is your existing employer. And that's one of the reasons why we love it when people come through. It's not just a success factor, the fact that they already know their employer, and if they're being sponsored in it, that works, that it can help with that. The Brussels funding that we receive actually comes to our organization itself. One of the things that we were very adamant about from the very beginning is that people not work for free. We pay our instructors. We wanted to be sustainable. In order to be Standing Lightning, we couldn't be a free organization, a goodwill organization, because we all get busy, we all get tired. And so in order to keep this running, we actually need to make sure that we pay for our rent at the co-working facility, we pay our teachers, we pay our mentors. And this is also some of the things that we're still very, very proud of. And it's been difficult. So indeed, we welcome people, and we ask people to come join us, because indeed it's very rewarding work. The thing that we've also seen is that those who succeed often end up earning more than they ever think they could.
Okay. And what's the success rate that you have so far? Is it like 100% success rate, or is it a little lower?
It's lower than that. And of course, you can play games with success rates, yes? And we try not to do that. And I think if you look at the people who initially signed up, even if they dropped out after the first day, versus the people who actually got jobs, we're above 60% in a success rate. So we're relatively proud of that. And the other thing is, though, is that we count success even if you drop out after 6 months, but you still get a job in cybersecurity, even if you left us, but we see that you're working. And this is what we find, is that indeed, a lot of people who dropped out early, it was the wrong time for them, their life didn't work out, they moved, they end up actually working in cybersecurity anyway.
Yeah. And what about, so I think you've seen the cybersecurity map, right? The one that shows so many domains, like
the Rafik Remen mind map, CISO mind map?
Yes,
Okay,
the mind map. And for new people, they don't really know where exactly to focus on.
Exactly.
How do you, as in, what is your advice, or how do you help them find some focus?
I love to use Rafik, his mind map, and then I close it quickly. There's another one that has some nicer colors, that has kind of rounded bubbles on it, and that's the one I like to use a lot more. And this is actually part of what we do in our career clinic, is that we actually try to work through a lot of things that we talk to people about. What are their intrinsic motivations? We like to use the kind of 3-factor model, which is, what are you intrinsically motivated by? What skills do you actually have that can work towards that? And then what is actually commercially viable in the workspace? And so we try to work with each individual person about this. And this can actually be a bit of soul searching. And I have some interesting stories about this. There was one lady in particular who I couldn't find out what she was intrinsically motivated by. She was just a complete blank. And I said, I need to know the emotional you. I need to know who you are. I said, tell me a happy story from your childhood. And she just looked at me and she said, Patrick, I grew up in a refugee camp in Rwanda. I have no happy memories from my childhood.
Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just sitting there stunned. I'm not competent to have this discussion with you anymore.
I should not have asked that question, right?
Yes.
Oh boy.
But kind of perhaps from the shocked expression and the fact that I just shut up for once, she was lovely, and she kept working with me on this. She actually now works for the Belgian cybersecurity group. She's part of my nation state cyber defense right now.
Cool.
And so she found her way
Good
through
girl.
that. Yes, it's amazing. And really, really proud of some of these successes. Some of the other people, they were easy. One of the people that I mentioned before, she was working deeply within the systems. She actually had a math degree that was, let's say, over 30 years old. And she loved crypto. We had an amazingly dynamic crypto instructor, and she just took to this like it was made for her. And so through this first class, through the first introduction to the different domains, we're actually always watching them, saying which one triggers on you, which one makes you really want to do these. And there's some people who really got excited. We did Raspberry Pis with Kali Linux and Wi-Fi hacking, and there were some people who just like, oh my, you've given me the tools to the kingdom. I'm going to break everything. And then there were other people who immediately took to the governance. And there's one in particular, a young lady originally from Ghana who I absolutely adore, in part because I was one of her first mentors when she landed. And she went into identity and access management. And a lot of people look at this as kind of like, why? And I keep looking at her kind of like, are you done there yet? Because there's a lot more out here. And she just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper into IAM. She's getting into some of the mainframes and some of the HPA privileges. And I'm just like, and each time she comes back and she peels open this stuff she's working on, and I'm just like, okay, I see why you're still there. You're loving it. How can we stop you here? Go.
Very nice. I'm also looking a little bit at the time, because while the conversation is absolutely lovely, we do need to wrap up a bit soon. Patrick, are there any pointers or any considerations that you want to give to people who are considering jumping and might not necessarily be fully certain yet?
Okay. The most important thing that I want to say is that it is possible. If you put in the work, it will happen for you eventually. And the thing that in order to have success, we need to be in motion.
Yeah.
And so in order to do this and make it a success for you, you need to be in motion. So if you want it and you sit waiting, it won't happen, I promise you.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start, and one of the biggest secrets is social signaling. If you want to, Sandy Pentland wrote a book ages ago about social signaling. But the thing is to authentically signal your interest, to be you, and to not be a jerk. I had this problem with a guy once who was a coach, who was being coached, and the coach said, be yourself. But unfortunately, he was authentically a jerk. So find the better person if you have some of these things, and go to this with an open mind and with an open heart, looking for people that care. And this is one thing that also amazes me. If you're someone who has a different profile, we talk about the MPS, the male, pale, stale, which is what I classify and have to identify as. I cannot tell you how many times people come to me, like me, with a sense of entitlement, saying, Patrick, help me through this problem, or help me through this challenge. And yet I will go to our cohorts, people who are paying to be in our program, saying, ask me to help you. And they won't. And so this is the thing, be willing to let other people help you. Because we want to, we desperately want you to succeed, because we love having new people in our domain. It validates us being in this domain. I mean, come on, please ask us.
Yeah. So I guess the last question that I have for Patrick is, I know that you do have stuff in CyberWayFinder, right? So people the teachers that help the graduates. How can the community help you?
Absolutely. So we love having new teachers. The most important thing is also hiring people when you find them. The other one is pushing people at us. We have public events where we invite people to come and listen to cybersecurity as a career. And I think almost no one who came to one of those events cold signed up for us. But almost everyone has referred a friend of theirs who then came and joined us. Because we all know someone else who is itching, who this lightning that says you're ready to move. And so this has been one of it. The other thing is that there's no big secret about who we are and what we are. There's no intellectual property. There's no fabulous secret behind us that make us successful. It's a lot of hard work. It's a community. It's a passionate community. But you can do this on your own. And so if you don't happen to be in our geography or the time zone doesn't suit, you can actually do this yourselves. And I encourage you to do this yourselves. If you're in an enterprise that's big enough, I actually hate recommending this because the problem with enterprises is then we're limited to the boundaries of our enterprise. I would talk to you another half an hour about that problem. Yes, and the thing I love about us is that we have all of these enterprises as our satellites that are able to make us successful. Use the training that you receive in the boot camps to get the certification to force you to learn the language. Look at these cybersecurity certifications, not as a test of your knowledge, but a test of your terminology. If you can be an A1 in French, then you can pass the SSCP.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful.
That's cool.
For now, we're done then. Unfortunately, as you might have noticed, we kind of lost Anne along the way. She had some internet problems, unfortunately. So sorry for that.
If we need to re-record, we can. She gave us a lovely introduction, and I'm afraid I ran off with my mouth. She didn't get a chance to warn you that I do this.
No worries. It was a lovely conversation, and I think it's also very interesting for the viewers to either, for example, contribute as a community member, or if they know someone who is interested in getting into cybersecurity. So yeah, that being said, Patrick, it was lovely having you here, and we want to thank you for your words, for your story, and for your time. Yeah, Faith, do you have anything final to say?
Yeah, definitely. We will link all your we will link the links to CyberWayFinder and your contacts in the video. But other than that, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully I'll get a chance to see you again sometime. And maybe we can chat about some of the other crazy things we're working on.
Yes, I'm definitely interested in recursive knowledge.
Yes, okay, absolutely. Huh? So we'll talk soon. Huh? Bye.
Bye-bye.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, all. Ciao, ciao.